I want to open by telling you a little bit about a wedding couple that I have. Their names are Sydney and Joey. Sydney and Joey have been together for a long time and have been engaged for just about 2 years. And they had planned a wonderful and beautiful, amazing wedding, which was to take place last weekend. There were going to be people there, so many people, friends, family, from all over the country. And it was going to be amazing. And as you know, though, COVID-19 arrived, and in early March, as we could really begin to see how everything was about to unfold, Sydney and Joey made the decision that they didn't want to postpone getting married. They would certainly wait to have a celebration in which they could be physically surrounded by everyone they love. But in terms of their getting married, they didn't want to wait any longer. So they went in March to get a marriage license while the Cook County clerk was still open. And sure enough, this past weekend, I took up one Zoom box space in a screen filled with many other Zoom boxes of Sydney and Joey's closest family and dearest friends. Sydney and Joey built a chuppah in their apartment, right in their kitchen, and it was beautiful. And they stood together under the chuppah. They shared words of covenant, and they were married. They said they didn't want to put their lives on hold. They wanted to celebrate now. I hope we can spend a little bit of time together talking about the beauty of this lesson. For all of us, we really know what it feels like to be living life on hold. Everything seems to be put in a pause position, really since mid-March, for some of us even before that, and who knows how much longer that will go on. But the truth of the matter is, our lives are not on pause. We don't get to put a hold on life. This is our life. We're living it now, even amidst these days where it seems otherwise. In Judaism, the idea of time and time itself is understood as one of the most precious and holy things we have. In fact, one of the very first understandings we have in creation is how God separated time, created the Sabbath as different from all of the other days of the week. We hear from Heschel that the Sabbath is a palace in time. But time isn't something we can own. Time isn't something we can possess. We do our best to understand how precious it is. And in times like this, when possible, to elevate it, to embrace it, to seize the moment as it were. And so as we face a future that is unknown, and the truth is, the future is always unknown, we can look into Jewish tradition to offer us insights as to how we might live our lives, even amidst the pause. This week's Torah portion, Emor, focuses so much on time. An entire chapter of the Parsha is dedicated to establishing the ancient and still practiced Jewish calendar. The calendar establishes Shabbat. It establishes all of the holy days and festivals that we celebrate, from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Passover, Shavuot, the counting of the Omer. The list goes on. And it tells us that these are the sacred times set apart by God for us. A little earlier, though, in the Torah portion, there is a list of behaviors, guidelines for how we might approach sacrificial rites that were practiced in the ancient days, in particular that the book of Leviticus focuses on. And one of the most important ideas comes from a simple instruction about how the book of Leviticus says we are to understand something called the Todah offering, the offering of thanksgiving. This was an offering that was not mandatory, but rather was invited as an opportunity for every Jewish person in the world to practice when they themselves encountered a miracle. And the text directs us, in the case of a Thanksgiving offering, to practice it as follows. Because these were sacrifices, ritual sacrifices, they involved the slaughter of animals. And the Todah sacrifice is unique in that it says that the sacrifice itself has to be consumed on the same day it's offered. You can't hold it over until the next day. Why put off till tomorrow what we can do today, as you might understand it? But there's something really interesting about this idea. When it comes to gratitude from a Jewish frame, we are invited to process it, take it in, consume it in real time. We are told not to delay or put off until a different, more convenient time our acknowledgement of, our celebration of, our exulting in the connection of our Thanksgiving. So I want to invite us as modern Jews and those who love them, who don't practice ritual sacrifice anymore, to really take to heart this idea of the Todah offering, the offering of gratitude, as a vehicle through which we might come to understand how to live our lives now. Not to put things on hold, not to pause until a later date that will be determined, but rather to experience and raise up joy, life, and the miracles that still abound all around us now. The Torah directs us not to hold them over, not to wait to take it in until the next day, some other time in the future. So how might we do our best to take in those moments of joy, those moments of celebration, those moments that make life worth living now? We found amazing ways to mark this. It's been incredible to see how adaptive human beings are and our community is. Perhaps you've been a part of a birthday parade where in front of someone's house, a parade of cars form and honk and yell and sing in order to acknowledge their birthday. I know I have them in our neighborhood all the time, and we can hear them even when it's someone we don't know. And when we hear the sound of the horns, it makes us smile and brings us joy because we know that someone has chosen to celebrate, and their community and those who love them are with them in that. In Judaism, the highest value always is pikuach nefesh, what it means to save a life. And the reason for that is, in a Jewish frame, we are commanded, in the most traditional sense, to live in a world, to live by Judaism, to choose life. You might think back to Yom Kippur and Parshat Nitzavim, how we hear God say to us, "See, I have set before you blessing and life, curse and death. Uvacharta v'chayim, choose life that you may live." Certainly part of choosing life is sheltering in place. Certainly part of choosing life and upholding life is making choices that assure the safety and health of ourselves, our loved ones, and the community around us. Choosing life does not mean throwing caution to the wind and putting ourselves, or even more importantly, others, at risk. But at the same time, choosing life means celebrating life, experiencing life, no matter what the condition. So I'll invite you the next time you begin to feel a little bit down, a little bit saddened about the way that things we would have wanted to celebrate differently are turning out, to reflect back to the Todah offering, to think to yourself, how can I offer gratitude for this joy, this miracle here and now, and not hold off until the next day or some other time in the future? I want to conclude by telling you something really amazing about Sydney and Joey's wedding. And I just want to make sure you know that they're okay with me sharing this with you. So Joey, the groom, has 2 living grandparents, a grandfather and a grandmother. And he is very close with both of them. It was unclear whether either of his grandparents would be able to travel to his wedding in person. However, because we were on Zoom, they were not only able to be there, but their squares happened to be right next to the squares of where Sydney and Joey's Zoom square was. So they were more proximate than they would have ever been had they been even in person at the ceremony if it were in person. But more than that, after the ceremony, we spent some time in a virtual reception, a Zoom room celebrating, toasting the bride and groom, sharing stories. And in one of the most holiest moments that I've ever been a part of, Joey's grandmother, the Holocaust survivor, shared the following. I never thought I would be able to see this day. It is truly a miracle. I am so happy for my grandson and his wife. Why hold over until the next day what we can celebrate now? Shabbat Shalom.